Welcome to the Personal Brand Era podcast. I'm your host, Ella Ray, and I'm excited to talk to Azra Ladora today. She is a holistic transformation and empowerment coach, mentor, and healer with a multi-dimensional background. She empowers female leaders and entrepreneurs to reclaim their inner vitality and self-worth and heal their bodies so they can create their dream lives. Her background is rooted in Ayurveda, nutrition, yoga, Vedic meditation, and healing the nervous system on a cellular level. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about. Hey, Ezra, so great to have you.
Hey Ella, thank you so much for inviting me.
So, the first thing that I would love to know is how did you get into Ayurveda and coaching?
Yeah, of course. So, the very first time I heard about Ayurveda was when I was doing my yoga teacher's training. And around the same time, I was navigating an imbalance in my liver and gallbladder. So, we had a lovely gentleman that came and did like an Ayurveda day. And there onwards, I just had a pull, like an intuitive sort of knowing. And so shortly after, I actually went for a consultation with him. And from there onwards, it was like it's been in my life since. And so that's how it all started. That was, oh my gosh, how long ago was that? Probably almost 15 years ago now. And so I then started doing my own research and actually self-studying on the side, but more so it was studying and observing my own body and looking at really how the principles of it was having a positive effect and improving my health and vitality, really.
And what I love about your approach is that you say you want to heal the nervous system on a cellular level. Now, let's dive deeper into that. What does that exactly mean, and how do you approach that when you actually work with clients?
Okay, yeah, sure. So when I started my healing, my health and healing journey, it was to heal the body, the imbalances that was happening. But it was also a knowing that I wanted to also transform and change my life. And so going deeper into what that needed and what that involved became more sort of came more and more became more clear to me. So nervous system regulation, I mean, it's greatly used in on the online space. I've been online for about 3 years, so I'm a new to the online world, if you want to call it. And so when we look at the nervous system, we store memories in the nervous system. I refer to them as cellular memories. So when we experience something that has felt particularly challenging for us, and our response to that challenge has created an imprint. Some use the word trauma, some use the word blocked energy, whatever, however you want to relate to it. So that memory is stored in the cells. There, in my experience, there is regulating the nervous system where you bring yourself back to feeling calm and centered. Because the nervous system is constantly being stimulated because the brain doesn't know the difference between whether it's been attacked by a lion or whether we're being challenged by something in the environment or whether we're being challenged by something, and because something is stored in the cells, that memory is being reminded. Hence, they refer to it as trauma response or etc. So in my view, in my professional view, my experience, yes, we can regulate the nervous system with day-to-day tools and we bring ourselves back to calm and centered. But I think we need to go slightly deeper than that and bring the body to a state, the body and the mind to a state where those memories which are being stored in the cells are being dissipated, because essentially at the subtlest level, they're just stored energy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And let's dissect a little bit what the nervous system is at its core. So because I'm pretty sure many of my listeners don't quite know what that is exactly and how to pinpoint that in their own bodies. How can they realize, or how can they become aware of something maybe negative going on inside of their nervous system? How do we recognize that?
So in most simple terms, the nervous system is the entire system that starts from the brain, and all the information, all the neurons, all the connections that are from the brain and the spinal cord. And so it's all information moving all the time, informing the body to adapt, to change, to respond, to so essentially that's what it is in the most simple term. And so if your nervous system is responding to something because it's responded to something before in a certain way, and there's a memory there, it can feel like in the body, it can feel like contraction, tightness, it can feel like anxiety, it can feel like essentially it can feel like contraction. That's what, the common sort of feeling is. And the nervous system is a very, very intelligent system. It's there to help us adapt to change and respond to things. So especially if we're talking about the nervous system that's there for the parasympathetic nervous system.
And what I find interesting is that you say the memory of both the event that took place is being recorded or stored, so to speak, and both the response, meaning your own response or from the people outside, is all stored. So the question is, especially when we think about trauma response and how to actually heal yourself from any type of trauma, I need to ask the question, what determines the first response to an action? And I am pretty sure that it starts very early on, maybe not in the womb, because the baby's still quite underdeveloped in that sense, the nervous system, right? The nervous system, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, develops fully when a baby is born, and then the development kind of starts off. So how can we determine the first response that from any type of action, and how does this first response determines the next one? So the workings of the nervous system in overwriting a certain action that we might have done in the past, or a reaction that we had in the past. How does that work?
There's a way where we can start analyzing, at what point did it happen? When did it happen? When was it stored? Was it when you were a child? Was it when you're in your mother's womb? Was it after? In my experience, there is no need to focus on healing from trauma. No need to focus on it in terms of, let's look at where did this come from? When we start to, wherever you are now, right now, in this present moment, when we decide that we're going to start to nourish, nurture, and calm the nervous system and heal the nervous system, even healing, it starts to happen naturally. Once the body rests, receives deep rest on the cellular level, there is simply a need to be aware of what arises because of a regulated and relaxed nervous system. Because this naturally leads the body to release what no longer wants to store. The body knows, it's very intelligent. So if something is there stored, when the body and the mind is being brought to the right conditions, hence the regulated and relaxed nervous system, because that is your natural state, the state in which the nervous system is on fight and flight, where in that response, that's a temporary state. That is to protect you, or to inform you that you need to flee or you need to fight. And and that can occur at so many different points in our lives. Is it possible really to know everything when it happened and really sort of analyze ourselves really into it? Whereas I'm in the view that when we bring the nervous system into a regulated, relaxed state, things start to unravel naturally. And yes, absolutely, we are required to have we are required to have awareness of simply what is coming up. And what is coming up can be different for different people. And it doesn't always have to come with a memory. It can simply be that something is moving from the body energetically or emotionally.
What I hear you say is actually something very should relieve everyone's mind who is listening to this podcast now. That if you say you don't have to focus so much on healing, it would simply mean that actually there's nothing really wrong with you in terms of your body. No matter what kind of intake it gets or what kind of input it gets from the outside world, you will be able to handle it. The body is able to handle it because it has been equipped with a self-healing system, so to speak, the nervous system itself. The only task that you would have is to actually be aware of that nervous system, how it works, and what it needs to actually heal itself. So you would more focus on self-care routines, so to speak, that would allow you on a daily basis, I assume, to allow your nervous system to heal itself from the daily stresses, from anxiety, from any type of pressure that you might feel at work, at home, with family, with friends, with what have you, with partners even. And this ties so closely into what I believe we also have is it's not only based on the nervous system, but just the immune system itself. It works in a similar way, in my belief, that if you are getting sick, your body knows what to do. The only job that you have basically is to know how to let this immune system do its job without interfering with any type of medicine, pills, or something that would suppress the symptoms that are basically there to help you be aware and realize that you are sick right now, right? Or sick. There's also a debate about that there is no sickness in reality, but that's maybe for another session. But let's go deeper into that focus and allowance of the nervous system to actually heal itself. How do you approach that? And maybe you can make an example of maybe clients that you see on a daily basis, the main problems that they have, and how you actually go about it. How do you take them through that process?
So, I mean, I just love what you have said there. And I echo that there is an innate pharmacy, that when the body and mind are brought into alignment with nature. And that is why I love Ayurveda so much, because if I were to simply say, what is Ayurveda? It's simply bringing your body and mind into alignment with what? Nature. That's simple. And yet something so simple, of course, can be difficult for so many of us, as it was for me, because we are so conditioned, because we carry, we don't know what we carry until we actually start looking and start doing the work, if you want to call it. So when it comes to healing the nervous system, there's something that I say: immune system, or the gut, healing the gut, the more sort of nutritional side of things, nutritive side of things. You cannot heal your gut, or you cannot heal your immune system without healing the nervous system. Everything is so interconnected with each other. So, for an example, when I worked with one client, I noticed, one of the first things that we spoke about, and what she wanted to transform, was her level of anxieties. And how she was feeling in her gut. So then we've got to then take a multidimensional approach, and that is looking after the temple, because the food, essentially what we eat, goes to our cells. Again, we're talking the cells at the subtlest level. And if we can eat in a way and tweak our lifestyle a little bit in a way where it suits our own body. So in this case, this person was experiencing dry skin. She was more in a later age of her life, so sort of premenopause, if you want to call it. So it's a different phase. And anxiety, erratic sleep. And interestingly, all these things are interconnected. They are showing us a pattern. And so when I started working with her, we devised her a personalized meal plan, and we took time with it. So it was it was the detail to what she was eating, when she was eating, how was it making her feel? Were there certain foods that her body was going, oh no, I don't want this? Or were there foods that were making her feel bloated? And so it takes a little bit of self-observation and awareness. And we might need to work with someone to support us, as I have worked with so many people for myself and continue to have a consultant for myself. And we then also looked at the pillar of, okay, anxiety. So what's going on emotionally here? And nervous system regulation is not something that we do one-off and then we're done, or we do it for 5 days and we're done. It's an everyday practice. It's an everyday integration. And I am someone that speaks, well, strongly because of my personal experience, that when we also utilize tools and modalities which help the mind settle, so transcend. And I mean, I spoke about Vedic meditation in my form. So that's one of the modalities that I do help my clients integrate to regulate their nervous system, because it really helps them practice it in a systematic way, where, because it's so simple and so easy and so effortless, they sort of drop into it quite easily. And when we start to regulate the nervous system regularly, every day, what starts to happen is that things start to come to the surface that wants to move and leave. You can call this trauma, you can call this stuck energy. Whatever comes up, we welcome it. And whatever is required for the client to help them process, so it can be different for different people. So in this case, if I go back to the same person, I found that helping herself ground with her breath really supported her, because there was a lot coming up, and things that were coming up were related to past experiences, were related to something that happened in when she was a teenager, when she was a child. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. We don't know what's there, but we don't dwell on it for too much, because what I have found when I worked with a psychologist for 1.5 years, about 18 years ago, in a clinical environment, and we did a lot of talking, etc., what was going on in my life, I have found that talking about what happened in the past and the trauma for too long, it doesn't serve me. It didn't serve me, and I have found that it doesn't serve the clients I work with. So it's not about we become in denial of those things, or we emotionally bypass them. We welcome them, we acknowledge them, and we just allow them to move without dwelling on them for too long. And then we come back to our daily practice where we regulate the nervous system, we look after the body, and we keep going.
I particularly love this, what you just said, that, and this is very interesting because so many people believe that in order to heal their trauma, they have to talk for hours and hours and hours about it, which the psychology would suggest to do, right? To recognize things, to become aware of things. And I believe there is a very powerful outcome of becoming aware, recognizing things, knowing where it's coming from. This is like the first step of actually healing, in how I understand healing. And what I love about your approach is that you don't stop there. You acknowledge it. And what I found crucially important is that you start moving in the now. Like whatever happened in the past might influence your behavior now, but in the now, you can decide however you want to move from here, right? However you want to move into the future, you can only decide that now. So continuing to let your past influence your decisions now, or your behaviors for the future, is a mistake, so to speak, by dwelling on them, continuing to talk about it constantly. Because I think as soon as you have uncovered all those things that have happened to you, it's enough. Like, what do you do with it actually? Like, I mean, you have uncovered it. It's like you get a gift, right? Your friend comes into your house and it's your birthday and you get all the gifts, right? And you unpack them and voila, there they are. But you are not going to do that every day, right? You are not going to unpack the presents every day, because that's a one and done thing, so to speak. And so I love that you actually help your clients to move on from that and find ways how they can move with a better state, with better energy into the future from now on.
Absolutely, because that is essentially where our power lies. And I'm very passionate about empowering a person, empowering a woman to take ownership of that. And there is a place to talk, there is a place to listen, there is a place to be seen and to be heard. I'm not in any way saying that we don't get to talk about any. We do. We talk. I hear, I see, I acknowledge. And sometimes we need to express what is coming up, but then we move on. We move on. And I am very passionate about guiding my clients to really ground into that.
In that power of self and that power of decision, so to speak, that you actually have the power to decide from now on. You don't have to run on that, what you described in the beginning, the cellular memory. You don't have to run that system, that software. You can create a new software in the here and now once you become aware of what's going on, and you know other options, right? If you recognize there are more options how I could handle things, like you can make a decision in the now. And
Yeah.
you also mentioned foods, and you mentioned Vedic meditation. Now let's talk about the foods first, because you mentioned that with the clients, and I know there are a lot of human types that react very differently to very different foods, depending on your culture, on your upbringing, on so many different things, on your body type, what have you. But could you tell the listeners maybe, and I'm feeling there is something that we all share, where you say these types of foods are bad for all of us, no matter what type you are?
Yes, so I mean, there are the foundation, I call them foundational pieces, or the foundation is where there's food that when we eliminate and minimize, or minimize, because I'm not one for restrictive diets and things like that. But it's in a way, we're not meant to be eating processed foods because they're denatured. Anything that's denatured has no nutritive quality. The body does not recognize it as nutrition. They're just empty calories. There's a difference between, having a treat once in a while, or if you're celebrating, or it's not about being that restrictive, but it's about recognizing that food that is denatured, or food that is eaten at a time where we are distracting the digestion, liquids and fluids that we're drinking, which is dysregulating the blood sugar levels, which I believe is one of the main causes for hormone balance with women, is that blood sugar levels going up and down, which affects our mood, affects the level of chemicals in the body. Every time a blood sugar level spikes, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline because it's a stressor. The body recognizes that as a stress, and even though you're not aware and conscious, that is what is happening. So when we do that on a regular basis, we are throwing our bodies out of balance. So if I were to give the most simplest advice to somebody, without even going into body types and to looking at where you live, because our diet is not just about eating clean, it's about where do you live. Is your environment more of a hot climate or a cold climate? Where do you come from? If you come from the Mediterranean, like I do, I'm from the Mediterranean, you're going to have a different ancestral sort of background to eating. If somebody comes from the North Pole or somewhere really cold, it's going to be different. So even before going into the sort of uniqueness of a person's body, the simplest advice or the simplest wisdom I can give: eat food that comes from nature. Even if you're eating meat or dairy or eggs, if it's coming from as close as it is from nature, grass-fed, organic, clean, fresh, then you are receiving nature's gift into your body, into your cells, because food essentially transforms and sits in our cells, which is, when they say you are what you eat, that's what that means.
That is so true. Absolutely true. I remember the difference. I grew up in Asia, in a very remote village, and we had also people who took care of animals, right? Very natural way, grass-fed cows, for example. And I remember we received every day, this woman came up to our house and she brought fresh milk in a huge bucket, right? And the taste of that milk is nothing like I ever tasted anywhere in the world where I have been traveling to, right? The milk that you nowadays can buy, even the organic milk, is not organic in that sense, because it has been processed as well with different processes and chemicals to make it fat reduced, to take out the butter or the any type of other ingredients that people tend to not like in the milk, because they want to watch their figure, to stay lean and slim and all that stuff, stuff that we have been brainwashed with. But I 100% agree with you, because that's how I grew up, in total nature, with our own garden, with animals that have been grown and raised in a very natural way, chickens, beef, cows, and all that stuff, where I actually had a taste of how it actually tastes when it comes from nature, right? In a very healthy soil. And I think that's also something that is missing across the world, especially in Western countries where the cities are so developed. The soil is drained a lot, and you can taste that. No matter where I go, I can never find the taste that I had when I was a kid. And I'm looking for it, like I'm searching for that. Where is that taste of home? And I so agree with you. So no matter where you live, whether it is a developed city or in a village, do whatever best you can do to find food that is in its most natural state without processed heavily. I think that's the best thing that you can do, and from there you can move further if you want to, if you can, right? Because that's also a money question for a lot of people to afford a garden, to afford organic food, because it's more expensive still in most places. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree with you. And it is true, our soils have been demineralized. And so that's why there's all these deficiencies going around in the world, you know, with our bodies. The environment has changed a lot. I totally relate to as you were talking about your childhood memories, I was having my flashbacks. You know, I grew up from the age of 8 in a very rural environment in Cyprus. My grandparents, they were all farmers. My family, great cooks. Food was a big thing, you know, it's like big, huge gatherings. Let's cook, let's eat. Everything was natural, everything. And the taste is absolutely, there's a distinctive taste. And when I look at my, you know, ancestors, my grandmas, her sisters, and my aunties, no one had any hormonal problems or weight problems, or at least most of them. And they're all pretty healthy. And you think, you know, we can learn a lot by looking at that lifestyle. And I'm not suggesting that we should all go and become farmers and work in the soil all day. But what I am saying is we've got to look back and see what happened and be informed. What happened to the food chain? What's happened? And we can learn a lot about observing our ancestors.
That is
The
very
way they,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. When I compare, for example, my grandparents, who are way above 90 now, my grandpa still has all his hair, like he has voluminous hair. He has all his teeth, never lost any teeth due to cavities or anything. He still works out, so he's still active even after 90. He never had any kind of blood sugar problems or diabetes or heart attack or any of those things, even though he has been through World War II, which was a very, very tough time for him, even going through hunger during that time. Still, based on the food that they grew in their own garden with their own animals and just taking care of your body to your best abilities. If I compare that to the regular folks that I meet during my travels across Europe, I see a big difference where people being 40 years old having a worse health state than my grandpa. And that makes me actually very, very sad. And even more motivated to kind of change that situation by actually helping coaches who know what they're doing, what they're talking about, like you, for example, that you take care of that realm. You actually help people to heal their nervous system, to heal their guts, to heal their whole health system, immune system, to actually have a life that is full of real joy, where in the absence of illness. I think that is one of my major goals, why I'm doing these interviews, why I am helping coaches primarily, because I don't want to be sad looking at people who are suffering so much. And I think in the Western world, it is even more brutal to witness that than in Asian countries. And it's catching up in Asia as well. You've been talking about Vedic meditation, and I would love to know what's the difference between other
Yes.
types of meditation, and how does and I think a lot of people don't even know. They know the word Ayurveda, but what is it really? What does it contain? What are the pillars of Ayurveda?
So they are many pillars to Ayurveda. but I'm going to sort of give talk a little bit more about the pillar that is more geared around nutrition and lifestyle, which is where my expertise mostly is. But to just to give a sort of a simple explanation to it, the word of Ayurveda is interesting. Ayur means life, and Veda is science, so science of life. And long before modern medicine was around, there was this system, which is more than 6,000 years old. And the sages of India, if you want to call it, they described it as a system where you can use a system of a natural and personalized approach, so which naturally activates the body's healing innate pharmacy to bring itself into balance. And there's an approach of where herbs can be used, self-awareness, the nutrition, mindful movement, and it's about aligning ourselves to the rhythms of nature. So to give that in a more sort of tangible context, let's just say that I'll give myself as an example. I live in the UK, in England, where the weather fluctuates a lot, and probably it's more cold and damp than it is hot and dry. And I'm in a season in my life right now where I feel like when the weather gets too cold and too damp, I notice that my skin starts to dry, and I feel a bit more cold. And it's just where I am. And so when we look at the environment here, I need to factor in that if I start to eat raw cold foods when I'm feeling cold and the weather is cold, I'm going to cause myself an imbalance. And I have done this many times years ago when I wasn't as informed. And so I'm probably going to feel bloated. I'm probably going to feel constipated. I'm probably going to feel like my energy is not quite there. So by aligning ourselves to these different factors, we create more balance. We bring balance into the body, and we can adapt food to help us. So we eat more warm foods, for an example. And I'm giving this in a very simple context. If you're somebody that tends to feel hot, warm, you have more of a warm makeup, and you live in a hot country, and you start to eat, and you eat a lot of spicy food and chili food, you start to increase the fire in the body. And essentially this is what it's about. It's about understanding the elements that pervade in the body, in our environment, and sort of in the universe to the subtlest sort of level: fire, water, earth, ether, air. So when we look at somebody who's got more fire or somebody who's got more coolness, and we can identify were they like this throughout their whole life? Is it more of their natural makeup, or is it because there's an imbalance going? How do we tweak things to bring more balance? Let's just say that someone who experiences high levels of anxiety is probably someone that's going to experience dry skin. Not all the time, but it's very common. They're connected. So somebody who experiences high levels of anxiety, I would say that in terms of their movement and lifestyle, exercise, if you want to call it, they need to be more walking in nature and doing long walks if wanted, but sort of more level, instead of doing vigorous exercises, because what they're doing is they're really sort of stimulating too much.
Wow.
And they need to bring excess anxiety means that the energy, the air, the ether, which is Vata dosha in Ayurveda, has gone too much. There's excess of it. So bringing that into balance, it takes a more gentle approach. So let's talk about, for an example, even breath work. I am in the view, in my experience, that not all breath work practices suit everybody. So I love, this is what I love. I love treating each and every woman as a personalized, unique individual. So by looking at all these different factors, we could bring the body into balance. So say, for an example, when I got sick with my gallbladder and I was diagnosed with gallstones and imbalance in my liver, that would be referred to as a pitta imbalance. They're pitta organs. And pitta is the dosha where there's fire and water. So it's simply the center of your body. It's where digestion happens. This is why our food is so important. Digestion, because out of whack digestion is going to affect your nervous system, the nutrition, how much you're assimilating, etc. So I had to look at, okay, so what was going on? And I worked with a consultant. And so it was a matter of reducing foods that had high levels of acidity in them, for an example, at that time, and bringing that excess fire into balance by taking a more cooling approach to the body. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. And it totally reminds me of Chinese medicine and the principles of
Yes.
Chinese medicine. There are
Yes.
strong parallels,
Yes, they are.
because that's also a very old kind of medicine approach that is even older than the Western medicine and is so advanced in my view or in my experience as to how they perceive the body, how they perceive health, and how they interpret illness and how they actually cure illness is so different to the Western medicine. And I think like people need to be more aware of that, to also research this area, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, and incorporate those things more into their lives, because it's much more natural. You understand your body in a way where nothing coming from outside could ever deter you away from that state of knowing what is good for
Yes.
you, of knowing how you can heal yourself. Like I have been using principles of Chinese medicine for the longest time, ever since I have my kids, like for 12 years now. And we barely been to a doctor. No matter what it was, I always knew what to do, because once you gain that knowledge, it's like nothing can wreck me now, right? And you are so confident also. You are not scared. That's the most important thing, because I think the world, and there are entities that try to scare people a lot ever since COVID, especially. Oh my God, in panic, you know? But when you have that knowledge, it reduces your anxiety. It reduces the panic that you might feel whenever something extreme happens, right? Especially when it is health related. And my feeling is, ever since COVID, is that people have not enough knowledge about health. Even though it's their own body that they're driving through this life, they barely have any type of knowledge about their own self, their own health, how it actually works. Of course, if you're not really interested in biology and all that stuff, and you're not as passionate as I am and you are, then you still have to have some type of interest in, like, how do you intend to get through this life if you don't know how to
Yes.
treat your vehicle, what fuel to get, so to speak, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I was so many golden gems dropping into my consciousness as you're speaking. It's like, and there's a lot to be said and a lot to be learned from ancient systems, because they come from a lot of wisdom and years and years and years and hundreds and thousands of years of observation over the body. And I also do believe there is a place for Western medicine. Absolutely there is. However, by not taking ownership of our own temple, we are giving our power away. And it's time. It's time. We're living times right now where I feel this is what we are called to do. And when you don't have health, you don't have anything. If you think about it, it's like, and your temple, your body is the most important thing for your evolutionary journey. If you're somebody that wants to explore wealth and making money in a way that's creating impact on the planet, if you're somebody that's wanting to explore the spiritual path, if you want to call it, it doesn't matter where you go. If you're somebody that wants to go into sports and explore that, excuse me, that might be my Facebook. I'll just close that. Then we are, regardless of what we are meant to, and I believe taking ownership of our bodies is the most empowering thing, especially for a woman, and men and women, but especially for women, because I have never lived a time where I've heard you hit hormonal balance all the time, polycystic ovary syndrome all the time. It's like almost all the new generation in my family, they all have polycystic ovary syndrome. And I'm not saying that there can't be genetic factors, but if we look at the increase of so many things, something is wrong. Or not wrong, but something is off. Because this is also, part of the evolution, I think. It's a calling to come back to our bodies, coming back to the foundation of things, and taking ownership of that. Knowing your own body, knowing who you are, is the most empowering thing.
And I think it's evident and very interesting, you could say, that whenever we look at news channels, for example, right, what are they talking about most of the time? It's mostly like negative news and what happened there and what's going on there, right? And in parallel, again, also with the school system, what is being taught to children in Western societies, it's oftentimes two crucial things are missing. And this is finances and health. Whatever you learn in school is barely scratching the surface, or it is a lie, like based on research that has been bought or paid off, right? And I don't want to bash on all the science. There is clean science, so to speak, as it was born from the genius minds of this humanity to conduct science in a proper manner. But I think there are also minds that use that for their own advantages. And this is what I see going through the school system, the Western one, going through university, and actually realizing how much of that research, how much of that scientific work is actually rigged, if you will, if is wrong, or is from a perspective of a male mind. So we cannot apply all of that, what has been found, to, for example, females. All of these things are kind of missing, right? And we need to rectify all those things. When it comes to finances, same thing. Like, what did I learn about finances in school? I learned how to count. Great. Now that didn't help me at all to start my own business, for example, right? I had to learn everything from the start, from the get-go, from the beginning. And I know many listeners who are listening to this now are like nodding their heads and like, where did we get that knowledge, right? There's so much missing of the crucial things that we need for life, which is health and finances. How do we finance our lives? How do we get through life, right? And since it is built on a financial and monetary system, like, please teach us, right? But this is missing. And so I'm a big advocate of creating school systems that actually make sense, that actually teach people something valuable and not just waste their times, which that's what we are doing with our kids right now. We are wasting their times and we are wasting their genius minds that could help us getting through the future, right? And maybe we need to go more into the misconceptions that you might meet in your work when it comes to mindfulness, meditation, maybe even, and maybe Ayurveda as well. Do you see any negative beliefs that people generally have that you need to kind of clean before they start working with you?
We tend to clean them on the way, like as we start working. So I mean, the most common misconception and deconditioning is that I don't have the time. And that takes a little bit of tweaking and bringing in a new perspective, which is an unlearning process again. Because if we don't make time to regulate our nervous system, recover from the day, keep ourselves in balance, centered, calm, so we can be more aware, more tuned in and connected to our bodies. If we don't make time to eat nutritive food and enjoy it, I mean, it's not just about eating it. I seriously believe that food is a sensational experience. We are meant to enjoy the process, the whole process. We are then going to need to make time for other things later on in life. So imbalances, or it could be a disease, or it could be that we have come to a point in our lives, towards the end of our lives, and we look back and we think, oh, I wish I made time for that. Because this is not just about looking after the temple, it's what we start to see happening in our own lives. This is about improving our lives, like evolving, growing, and going for what we want, what our intuition is calling us, going for our dreams, however that's going to look like for you. And so if we are stuck on a roller coaster and we are not stepping back to sit and create that space for the nervous system, for the digestion, for the body, for the mind, then what's happening is that we are just on autopilot. I mean, this is one of my clients said to me, I didn't realize, well, not one, most of them do say this, I didn't realize I was on autopilot. And yes, it can be absolutely wonderful that we create businesses and we create success and we create money and we create wealth. And if that is also creating impact in the world, a ripple effect, amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, I admire women that are on that pathway. Let's take our bodies with us.
I love that. Totally love that, what you just said. Wow. I had a thought and it slipped. You crashed it with your last sentence. Yeah, because it seems like if we continue to be on autopilot, we kind of indeed leave our bodies behind while our minds are creating these businesses, this type of success, and whatever we kind of, and especially women tend to do that, I think, we dream ourselves into something without it being a reality just yet. So if we have that type of gift, that's beautiful, that's amazing. But by dreaming ourselves into a future that doesn't exist just yet, we tend to tear our physical bodies away from our minds. And this is an observation that I did over the last, I don't know, over 20 years now, that I am living in the Western world that is so different from the Asian world where I grew up, where it is more promoted the connection between the soul, your heart, your just everything about yourself, your aura, everything that counts into your being is perceived as a team, as a connected entity. But when I entered into the Western world, I noticed how those things were torn apart year by year, right? And it was such a cultural shock for me to experience that. And one day I seriously sat down and I realized, oh my God, I just became the same type of person that Western people are, that I so clearly saw as being a faulty way of living when I first came to Germany, for example. And that was a quite embarrassing moment for me, because I swore myself when I was a kid that I would preserve that holiness of how I grew up, that clean and empathetic. There was no competition, no envy, at least in my village. I cannot tell about other villages or anything, but at least in our little place, it was like a little paradise. I cannot describe it any other way. And I wanted to preserve that dearly. And I missed it so much when we had to leave, actually. And then realizing as a teen, you actually lost it. You actually couldn't preserve it, right? And until I had my kids, I couldn't find the strength and maybe even a reason to actually start on that journey again, to go back to my roots, to actually um, remember, simply remember who I am and where I'm from and what is really important. Not hustling, not running for the money, not trying to convince anyone of who I am, not trying to get any kind of accolades across in school, good grades and all that stuff. I tried all those things and it felt all so wrong. And I tried being with doctors, being treated by doctors, and it all failed miserably, so much that I felt completely torn apart. And I think we need to remind people of the unity that they are, that everything that makes them be, they need to remember that, they need to honor that. And honoring something actually takes time. And
Yes.
I do notice that I fall victim to that type of mindset of hustle and do and achieve.
Yes.
And I love that spirit, but that's a very masculine spirit, right? And coming back into that feminine, right? Taking time, relax, think, be aware, create from your inner being. It's a different kind of energy, right? That if we miss to incorporate that into ourselves on a daily basis, I think we miss the point of life.
Yes. Beautiful. Yes, we do. And back to the sort of misconceptions. So I often hear that there is a misconception that Ayurveda is complicated. Actually, it's quite simple, quite the opposite. Or that you need to stop drinking coffee completely, and that you need to be eating dal and rice, and that's it. It's all about herbs.
Mm-hmm.
That is just limiting the whole what it's about. And yes, there are some cases where if you're having severe sleeping problems and excessive anxiety, then I am definitely going to be in the favor of reducing, in fact, eliminating caffeine, because that's what your body is calling for. But do you need to cut out coffee completely? No, in some cases, you can enjoy it, but let's tweak it. Let's make it in a way that works for your body. Let's get creative. Let's have fun with it. This is another misconception, that it's serious. It's not. We don't need to take it too seriously. We can have fun with it. We can get creative with it. And so it's not just about cutting the coffee and the herbs. It's a whole bringing yourself back to wholeness and knowing your own body and mind. This is what it's about. Because only when you get to know yourself, know what's happening to yourself. I mean, it's not just about the food. It's about the emotional body as well. Because somebody who's got, for an example, excess fire in their body and is having huge digestion problem, it's very, very, very likely they're also impatient and get angry easily. Do you see how it's all connected? And so there's nothing complicated about it. It's just a matter of finding your unique way. And this is what I love and I'm very passionate about, to get to know yourself, where you are. Where are you mentally? Where are you emotionally? Where are you physically? And what can we do? What can we tweak? What can we integrate to bring yourself into unity, like you said, instead of separation? So this whole thing that I don't have the time, it's actually not about having the time. It's about making these things a way of living, which is a completely different existence. If you're trying to make time for something, or I need to make time to cook, I need to make time to sit down and meditate, I need to make time, then it's like a to-do list. So my approach, my personal experience, my journey, my way of mentoring is, what can we do? And if the person is open to it, of course, because it's two ways, what can we do? How can we shift this in a way into your life where it's just a part of who you are?
In a natural way, yeah.
In a natural way, because then it becomes integrational. That's what integration means. And that's when you see transformation. It's when we integrate the smallest shifts on a day-to-day basis that we see lasting, fast transformation. Transformation doesn't happen overnight. I'm not one that believes that. So I'm one that believes this is a process of patience and time and shifts and integration and falling off the wagon and being imperfect and getting messy and then coming back again, readjusting, course correcting.
I think it's in the details then. If you say to integrate something so that it fits almost like a glove into their already existing lives, would come down to the details, how you see things and how you try to incorporate them, just like with the coffee, right? If someone listens to a podcast and a doctor reveals if you drink coffee, it drives your blood sugar so high that you will have the tendency to get diabetes or whatever. And now the person is scared, I don't want to get diabetes. Now I will get rid of the coffee, right? The motivation might be there, but it might be a wrong type of motivation as to how this person gets rid of coffee, right? If the person now in all their action taking spirit sends the coffee completely away from the kitchen, it might be the wrong approach based on whatever type they are, right? Some people, as you mentioned, need to do it slowly. Need to find a way to integrate it in a way that fits into their already existing time schedule, right? And I truly believe what you just said, that real transformation can only take place if it comes from you. If you have made that decision to actually change it, like this, and this, and not some doctor told you, not even some coach told you, you have to do it this and this. I mean, you can try. If it works immediately, then bravo to the coach, right? That's amazing if that happens. But sometimes it doesn't. So again, the person needs to take ownership, right? And to come up with their own ways and creative thinking as to how they can do it. If a coach or a doctor tells them to eliminate potatoes, and they have lived all their lives on potatoes, but now they have diabetes and they cannot eat potatoes, like, there will be ways to do it. Like, you don't have to get rid of it immediately, because you will not die immediately, right? You just give more and more room for the body to actually heal itself, just what we talked in the beginning about, right? You need to make more and more room for the body to actually function in its most natural state.
Yes, absolutely. And coming back to the difference between Vedic meditation, it's also known as transcendental meditation. The difference between this and other types, if you want to call it. So, I mean, first of all, the word meditation, I mean, it's so multi-diverse nowadays. Meditation, some say I'm walking, it's a meditation. I'm in nature, I'm in meditation. I'm visualizing, I'm in meditation. I'm seeing colors, it's meditation. So in my view, when meditation is used to explain and identify so many different things. So what is the distinctive difference? The distinctive difference is transcendence. Excuse me. So when we are able to close our eyes and transcend the busy mind and go to deeper states, because the mind is essentially like an ocean, right? If we use that analogy to make it more tangible, the deeper levels of the ocean is quieter and more still. It's a matter of how can we direct the mind naturally, effortlessly, to drop into those subtler and more still states. And this is a difference between Vedic meditation and the other tools. All the other tools, they involve focus and concentration, visualization, using some kind of objective thing to allow the mind to settle to a certain level. Whereas with Vedic meditation, we are transcending. We're not even meditating. The word meditation is placed there to simply imply that you need to sit down and close your eyes to practice it. But actually, it's a silent practice, and it's practiced by utilizing sound, also known as mantras. And these sounds have, in the context of this system, has no meaning. We're not attaching any meaning to it, anything. It's just a sound that has a vibrational quality, like all sounds do, but these sounds specifically have a vibrational quality, frequency that resonates with the subtlest level of nature, also known as pure consciousness, stillness. And so when we plant that seed into the mind and we close our eyes and think it, the mind just settles and transcends. Effortlessly, easily, you transcend. When the mind settles deeply, the metabolic rate settles very deeply because it's connected. Then the metabolic system, your heart, in another language, informs the nervous system to simply rest and rejuvenate and relax. And so then you come out again and you practice it again. And so that would be my definition of the difference between the different systems. And let me just reiterate, one is not better than the other, but what I am called to say is that I have found, after exploring different pathways, training and studying them, that unless the mind transcends, and perhaps someone can transcend naturally, it can happen without the sounds, who knows? But what I have come to see is that unless the mind transcends and we experience that transcendence, we are not utilizing the fullest potential of restfulness. And for as long as we are visualization, focus, concentration, focusing on the breath. All these are amazing and they're so useful. They're just different approaches.
So you mentioned the sound, and I find that quite interesting to go more into. You mentioned that with the help of the sound, you actually can achieve a deeper rest, right? You actually tap into your subconscious easier than without the sound. Can you explain why exactly? What does the sound and the frequency of the sound, why is it so aligned with the frequency of the body, of the surrounding, of nature, of the earth? And can you explain the difference, for example, to other sounds and other types of music that we listen on a daily basis?
Yes, of course. So, first of all, when we look at music, sounds, words, we are going to associate meaning to them. Anything that we associate a meaning to is bound to keep us on a more surface level. Now, in terms of where these sounds come from and how they've been studied, in all honesty, is not possible for me to comprehend how the great sages or great teachers of India or wherever they were from sat in solitude or in nature and they studied and they studied and they observed. But what I will say, and how I've been informed and how I have experienced this in my own mind and body, is that these sounds have a frequency which resonate with pure levels, deeper levels of the mind, pure consciousness, pure awareness. We can call it divine. There's so many words for it. They all mean the same thing. And it's a level that we're all seeking to experience, whether we know it or we don't. And so when we close our eyes and we experience this sound, the sound, if you want to call it, or the mantra in the mind naturally knows, because it has a resonance. It's aligned with those subtler levels. That's why we don't need to try, focus, or put effort into it. It's just a natural process. And there is no meaning attached to these sounds. We don't put a meaning to them, because as soon as something has a meaning, it's bound to create chatter in the mind. So that's the difference, and the best way I can explain it from my personal experience.
Yeah, this frequency that these sounds tend to have are naturally have a frequency that is connected to the body and the cells in a way that the water inside the cells create a crystal formation that promotes health and healing, which when I found out was mind-blowing to me. I've been in music all my life. I grew up with music and have been doing music all my life. And when I actually found that most of the music that we listen to today has the wrong type of frequency, especially since around 100 years now, ever since they have the well-tempered piano, right? When they introduced that first to the world, they actually changed the frequency of the sounds to make it possible for orchestras to play together. Like the tuning had to be there, right? Otherwise, people kind of felt that harmonies would not work together, because harmony was a concept developed in the European cultural sphere, so to speak. And all the 1,000 years before, there was no harmony, basically. That was a very new concept. And in order for harmony to work, they needed to tune the instruments, right, to make it sound beautiful. So, but what happened with this type of new system and approach is basically they misaligned the sound from our bodies. So the sound would only remain either in the head or in the lower torso. So it would activate, so to speak, the frequencies of the head, the mind, or the lower torso, meaning feeling the urge to dance, for example. If we listen to deep bass or drums, right, that activates the lower torso, and we just feel like, man, I need to dance now, you know. But the heart, because the frequencies have been changed, it never reaches the heart. And that's the thing where the healing actually takes place, to what I know so far. So as soon as you activate and use the natural humming sounds, or the sounds that the Vedic meditation uses, you would naturally use a vocal tone and a vocal frequency that is attuned to your heart. And as long as you are in your head, classical music, for example, is very much in the head. It activates the frequency of the head very much. And you become quite intelligent. And that's even backed up by research, right? Let your baby listen to Mozart and it becomes more intelligent, right? It's very true. It helps enhance intelligence, but not healing, right? So if you want to heal yourself, you have to get away from Western music. You have to get away from the cleanly tuned instruments that you so love to listen to, right? And then we go into the Fibonacci frequencies. I'm sure you heard of them as well. And they are very similar to the natural tones that we would naturally use as when we start to meditate, right? We would not look for, oh, am I singing on pitch? Am I keeping my tone up and stuff? We would not think about that, because we are naturally, as you said, we would naturally look for a sound that is already attuned with our bodies. And it is extremely interesting for me to find out that during the day, when we actually bombard ourselves with all that type of music, we disalign ourselves. Actually, what happens with the cell water itself is that it is destroyed. For the duration of you listening to that type of music, the cell water gets destroyed, the molecular structure of the water is destroyed. And unless you find peace and quiet after that, and you do some healing, your cells will never heal. That's where also all the diseases might be coming from, because of the molecular structure that is being changed in your cellular water. And I think if we take that into account, how much of a lifestyle will, how much would our lifestyle actually change based on that?
A lot. And we don't need to do it all day. It's just a matter of closing your eyes and 10-15 minutes, ideally twice a day, because in the morning, when you do it, this is my experience, it sort of prepares you tune in. And in the evening, it's sort of a recovery from the day. And just a very short sort of way of summarizing what creates healing and improvement in one's life is the integration of your divine self into the body. And yet, because we are in this human body and we are multidimensional, this is why I am one that speaks passionately about a multidimensional approach. Emotional body, the physical body, and all the stuff that starts to come up because you're changing. Every time you're integrating, you're changing your structure, you're changing everything. So the old will start to surface. And so it's incredibly important to be aware, as a mentor, of what's coming up, what is moving, and to make the other person aware of it if they need that support and guidance, because we all have blind spots. We're not perfect. We're human beings.
And where can people find you once they feel inspired from our conversation to actually work with you? Where can they start finding more about your work and actually contact you?
I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a link tree there, which I'm building on because I've come to the online space. It's been 3 years. So you can find me there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and I have a link tree. And yes, feel free to DM me. I'm also about to release a new guide, like a gift, where you can download and with some short videos. It's called Mind Body Wisdom, and it's simply that. It's about bringing the mind and the body into balance and activating the natural wisdom that you have. And I have shared as much as I can in there in terms of value. And so yes, you can download that. That's going to release in the next week or so. There's just a few more tweaks. I keep adding things. Oh, I can put this. Oh, I can put this. So that's something that you can get hold of on my link tree once it's ready.
Of course, I will leave all the links in the description for my listeners. Thank you so much, Azra. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you.
My absolute pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Very lovely conversation. I have enjoyed every minute. Thank you, Ella.